At the end of Australia's greatest river system lies the Coorong and Great Southern Lakes, home to a vibrant fishing and farming community. The Coorong is a national treasure, home to a huge number of birds, plants, fish and other wildlife.
The Coorong is a body of water that's at the very end of the Murray. We get everything that's happened upstream, good or bad.
A river dies from the mouth up. The Coorong and lakes are currently in trouble, with critical flows under the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, the only thing keeping them on life support. Let's take a look at how the system works and why the food bowl of Australia relies on a healthy Coorong. The larger of the two great rivers is the Murray. It delivers the majority of South Australia's water. This is largely winter rains stored in upstream dams that slowly makes its way through the system. The Darling River brings summer rains from the upper catchment. Traditionally, the Darling supplied almost 40% of South Australia's water entitlement. However, due to irrigation expansion, this has substantially reduced in recent years. The two rivers converge at Wentworth and slowly meander their way down to South Australia, supplying about 50% of Adelaide's drinking water and eventually flowing into Lake Alexandrina, the largest of the Great Southern Lakes.
Water pours into two freshwater lakes, Lake Albert and Lake Alexandrina, and then there's a man-made structure called the barrages, and downstream of that is the Coorong.
Historically, the natural flow of water from the Murray River poured into the lakes, into the Coorong, and finally flowed into the Southern Ocean through the Murray mouth. Over time, a build-up of irrigation saw river flows reduced to the point where rather than fresh water flowing out, salt water from the ocean began entering the lakes. As a result, barrages were built to stop the salt water inflow, and while this engineering solution worked to keep the lakes fresh, it did not solve the critical problem that not enough water was flowing down the river. Before irrigation was developed in the Murray-Darling Basin, an average of 13,000 gigalitres of water every year would flow into the lakes. By the 2000s, the amount of water had more than halved to just 6,000 gigalitres. In the early 1980s, this lack of flow saw the mouth of the river close.
In 1981, the mouth closed for the first time ever. It's never been a big mouth, but there's been enough water coming down the river all the time to enable the mouth to remain open.
Down here at the Murray mouth, you've got dredges digging away sand to keep the mouth open, because it's not that there's not enough water. There's enough water, but it's not getting down here. There's not enough coming down to keep the mouth open.
The lack of fresh water flows and the partial closure of the mouth have seen the Coorong becoming increasingly salty and sick, resulting in toxic algal blooms and the dreaded monosulfidic black ooze dominating this collapsing ecosystem.
The monosulfidic black ooze that's been building up in the estuary is quite remarkable. It's black, it stinks, it causes human health issues, but worse than anything, it kills all our fish. What's more, it kills all the food for our birds.
If you close the mouth, the river will die. It'll be just stagnant water, just a pool of water that's left to die, and everything in it will die. During the Millennium Drought, flows down the Murray River petered out. Bird numbers in the southern lagoon of the Coorong crashed from 150,000 in 1985 to as low as only 25,000 in 2010.
The 1956 flood and into the 60s, you could drive along the barrages and just a wall of birds would lift off on either side, just black. You couldn't see the water on either side for birds. We certainly don't see that now.
Bird numbers have gone down, fish numbers have gone down, aquatic veg has almost disappeared.
The fish isn't like it was, the bird life isn't the same.
A lack of fresh water saw salt levels rise dramatically and water levels fall, exposing 209 square kilometres of lake bed. Of this, 21 square kilometres were acid sulphate soils, which were catastrophic for the local environment.
When it got really low, there was dust storms coming off Lake Albert. You was able to walk right out.
The lake disappeared We went out as far as we could to get water. We dragged 2-inch pipes right out for kilometres out into the middle of the lake to try and keep water up to the cattle, but in the end we had to get rid of all the cows. 700 milking cows, good producing milking cows, and pelicans, heaps of pelicans out there. They would be getting the carp, the dead carp, and wallowing in the water, and I'd just sit on the quad, just sit there, talk to the pelicans, and they just waddle over. And I just talk to them and just wonder what the hell's going on. Who else could I show how devastating this is?
There was 28 dairies down this road in the year 2000, and now there is 3.
Our whole town, I think we lost about a third of the people. Half of our main street is still empty.
Governments were forced to respond and recognise that too much water was being extracted from the Murray-Darling Basin. As a result, the Basin Plan was created to return water from irrigation use to the environment.
Under the Basin Plan, it recognised the need to return water to the system to keep it healthy so it could go on supporting all the communities. But that's been too slow and not enough real water being returned, and so we need to speed that process up.
Keeping this area healthy is not the only reason to have water flow to the sea. These flows flush toxins, nutrients, and most importantly salt from the land out to the ocean. The Murray River carries 2 million tonnes of salt from the basin out to sea every year. That's 228 tonnes every hour. These nutrient-rich flows also support the productivity of the nearshore fishery, where seals, sharks and dolphins feed.
If they don't let the environmental flows through that we need for the Coorong, up there will become more salty, it will become more nutrient rich, it will get more blue-green algae, it will get more organic carbon in the water body, it will get more sediment build up. The environmental flows are needed as much upstream as they are down.
For the system to be healthy, it has to flow to the sea, and you have a certain amount of water has to go to the sea to move all the salt and nutrients and rubbish. Now, if it stops happening, it's like a cancer. It'll just spread from the Murray mouth all the way up the system.
With this part of Australia being so flat, the salty water can easily travel up to 250 kilometres upstream. This would have devastating impacts on irrigation and the environment, and also threaten the water supply of over 1 million Australians. The health of the Darling River is particularly important to the lakes and Coorong.
The difference between the Darling and the River Murray is not so much the nutrients or the turbidity, it is the temperature of the water. As temperature increases, so does natural productivity in the water column.
Over-extraction for irrigation has seen the Darling River run dry for extended periods, impacting the whole system, including the lakes and Coorong.
South Australia being downstream of the Wentworth Junction relies on both those river systems, and we haven't seen decent flow come out the Darling for a long time now. So it has taken that out of the equation, and that's put a lot more pressure onto the Murray system to supply the irrigators and the towns and the councils, etc. Consumptive use, Adelaide, has all put this massive pressure on the Murray system.
The choices we make in terms of water use in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and here in South Australia have consequences throughout the whole system. It is essential that every Australian that cares about a healthy and productive Murray-Darling Basin pays attention to what's happening, especially here at the Murray mouth.
I want my kids and their kids to experience a healthy ecosystem where we measure birds by the hectare, we measure fish by the tonne.
It's only when you're at the end of the river looking up do you get a real sense of the fact that this Murray-Darling system is one living, breathing entity. And until we consider it as one system, we're not going to get it right.
Our old people said there was enough to share, and importantly to work together and make it work.
Everything is connected. We are one system. One river!